This slavery video pissed me off so much. I went and spent like 3 hours actually learning the start of the abolition movement, despite her.
Okay, well
I
that's
found a really good scholar who's come out with a new book that basically brings the start, really looks at the grounds, the sort of philosophical basis of abolition, and moves it from 1830, around the time of the Great Awakening, much earlier to the colonial period, particularly in Philadelphia and New York, I think, the Abolition Society and many mission societies that they had.
well. Then of course the mainstay was New England.
Yes, although there's an interesting conversation. I think I actually sent you the links to all the nerdy history
Oh
videos.
bollocks! Go on.
But one of the things he talks about, and this historian whose name I forget, he's a white dude from, I don't know, Mississippi or something, but he's actually pretty woke. But he
Right,
was saying that
Doctor
when,
White dude. Yeah, go on.
yeah, so the initial idea of the sort of first wave of abolitionists, and still in like the edges of colonialism, the start of the new revolution or the new republic,
Right,
was
wasn't that a
that,
Star Wars film?
yes, they pretty much took from the Roman writers the idea of a virtuous citizen.
Yeah.
And that was their model. Now, of course, it was in a male's body and all kinds of other things. However, the first abolitionists were in favor of gradual abolition, which is a concept I was explained. I can come back to, but their plan was: look, we can overcome white prejudice if we can just demonstrate that Black people can live according to what it means to be a virtuous citizen. And we do that by building schools and educating people, and having Black businesses. And through this, white people will just see that it's okay. And then they
And
were
everyone
like,
lived happily ever after. Yeah.
exactly. That obviously did not work. And so the idea of that first wave, gradual abolition, was they had got New York State and maybe Pennsylvania, maybe some of the New England states, to say people born after this date will no longer be slaves. So they wouldn't be slaves. They would be indentured servants until their 28th birthday. So the idea was
Right.
that the owner would still get like more than a quarter century of work out of them, getting back the value that they invested in buying another human being, but the person would have freedom at the end of the 28 years.
Yeah.
And that was their sort of like compromise position. And they actually had quite a lot of Black church leaders and people who were associated in the free Black communities who were trying to also end slavery. There were a lot of collaborations between Quakers and Black church leaders and communities. Also some liberal types as well. But then after that emerged, someone, I'm not entirely sure, came up with the whole idea of repatriation. What we do is, we don't, you can free them, but you send them back. And that split the initial abolition movement into people who are like, we can overcome white racism, prejudices, and we can, with those who wanted to send everybody back, basically recolonize Africa.
Yeah, it was literally called colonization. Yeah.
Yes, it was called colonization. And because of that sort of break within it, and slavery being much more entrenched, the movement itself failed to achieve, other than on the state level, any real progress toward ending slavery. But they laid the philosophical and moral groundwork for the second part, which came after the Great Awakening.
Although, interestingly, a clash of two white supremacies, the nation of Liberia, which literally exists because of it was once the pepper coast in the west coast of Africa, which is literally the nation that exists because ex-slaves who went through the colonization process, what would have been citizens, so obviously they weren't, were sent there, and they created this nation which became Liberia. And the only reason that Liberia was one of the few parts of Africa never to be colonized by the European countries was because some of those people were American citizens. Because they literally, people still kept going over there thinking, fuck this racism, let's go to Africa.
Yeah.
And so America being the rising power, no one wanted to be too fucky with it, so it was left alone. It was seen as like a hot potato, so just leave it. So two white supremacies collided, and Black people kind of were able to just find a little niche there on the west coast of Africa. So there you go, just a little nonsense for you. Anyway, so having taught you a little bit of actual history.
Yes, and can I also say, if I can ask you, you can share the screen with me so I can see the video.
Oh shit, sorry, yeah, no, because I shared it earlier and then I unshared because
yeah,
I need to get rid of the D&D thing. I had to for my own
The
Sanity.
the real line, slavery existed alongside of white people for decades, from 1648 until the 1780s, quite happily. Like nobody really doubted it. But when sort of the ideas of a republic were adopted by the majority white population and the values it has, I think in combination with the Enlightenment, they were claiming principles of human dignity and freedom, which brought the moral cognitive dissonance of slavery into much greater relief.
Well, I was about to say,
That's why white people are more morally culpable than other ancient civilizations that didn't even really structurally question it.
yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. Actually, you mentioned the Enlightenment and the idea of the virtuous citizen. That obviously, a lot of that came over with the writings of Rousseau, who was the French Enlightenment philosopher who inspired a lot of the French revolutionaries and the American revolutionaries and the Haitian revolutionaries and all of that. They were. His concept of building a virtuous government and stuff was absolutely key to the Enlightenment, really.
Yep.
Which obviously, like you say, you mentioned it was built off, ancient Roman ideas as well. Anyway,
Yes. Yeah, and then the Quakers were really the ones who led it, but then it kind of mainstreamed more generally.
Yeah. Anyway, so having had, this video is so disgusting on a number of levels. Basically, I don't even need to explain this to you because you'll see it as blatantly as your hand in front of your face. This is basically, they hired a black person, and if it's a black person doing the presentation of a video, it's going to be some really racist shit because they don't like to play identity politics, except all of the times they do.
Yes.
And so that's what that's it. This is Aunt Tom. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Well, I don't feel like that's my phrase to assign, but I will talk about just the.
If there's any situation in which this is the useful house, such and such.
Someone who is willing to sell themselves for the optics of water-carrying white supremacy.
This is, because this entire video is white people, you don't need to worry about any of it.
Yeah, don't feel bad. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad. It's fine.
Yeah. So,
It's done now.
Candace Owens doing quote-unquote history. Let's have a look.
And now for a brief history of slavery. Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people.
Nobody said it was.
11 seconds in.
Yeah.
And 4 of
Feel
those
better,
seconds
white
were
people.
PragerU intro. So 7 seconds of actual content. No one has ever said slavery was invented by white people? Ever? Like, it's in the Bible.
It obviously yes, it's in the Bible.
It predates the existence of white people, really.
So, but the kind of government structures that were built around legal frameworks around slavery to protect it is kind of novel. I mean, the Romans, everyone had laws about it, but like state-wise and agreements about fugitive slave acts and all that kind of stuff. Like there was a particular American exceptionalism, shall we say, to American slavery.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that chattel slavery was a particular thing, but even that wasn't invented by white people because we don't really assign things like that based entirely on race. Yeah, slavery has existed in all places, including every country on earth right now. There are slaves. It's an underground economy in many respects, but everywhere has, sex slavery. It's disgusting, but it's true.
But you start with a straw argument.
But you start with a straw argument. Yeah, and we'll get to it, but America has a very significant prison population who are used as slaves legally.
Yep.
Anyway, so, just start off with a complete straw man of your opponent's position.
Logical fallacy 1.
Intellectual honesty from PragerU from the very beginning. Good.
It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown.
Well, it did in American territory.
Exactly, yeah, but I'm not going to give them the good faith of allowing them that out. Because they've said it wasn't invented by white people, full stop. It didn't start in 1619. Again, it's in the Bible. Yeah. Which I think, let me just check my history. Yeah, it was written before 1619. Okay, good.
And a second straw man.
Yeah.
2
straw men, 16 seconds. I mean, this is This is some fucking rapid fire bullshit.
Yes. Quite.
This is a Gatling gun of dog shit right here, people.
It existed before then. It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World. In fact, when the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs.
What does that have
The
to do with
Caribs-
anything? Well, I guess we'll find out.
Well, what I want to say to Candace and to everyone watching, or specifically to Candace and PragerU, how'd that work out for them?
Mm-hmm.
Let's ask them. Oh, that's right, the Taino and the Carib no longer exist. Those people were wiped out by white people.
If you think infanticide was always morally wrong, even when it was socially acceptable, even when Moses ordered his troops to commit it in the Bible, you still think it was morally wrong, you can think the same thing about slavery. You can make those moral judgments on past. And this is just simply a straw man, as you said, trying to say that it was started in the 15th and 16th centuries. Okay, you back now?
I just cat-related
I
shenanigans.
heard it, and I riffed. I just riffed to give you the space.
Boom! There he is. Look at his tiny little face. Let's touch his paw. Oh, he's going to bite me. He's going to bite me. Ah! Sorry.
Beard's getting long again.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he's got strong opinions about Candace Owens, but they can't be aired for terms of service purposes. Anyway, yeah. No, she is. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, yes, so, yeah, there's nothing, this has got nothing to do with...
Nothing to do with anything.
Anything, yeah.
Enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner.
Oh, little racist dog whistle there toward the idea of the natives are primitives who like to eat people and stuff.
Yes, anything in a PragerU video, even if it's historically true, immediately becomes sus once it comes out of their mouth.
Because also, I mean, if you wanted to like go down the line of it being technically true, because I'm sure cannibalism did exist at times, they existed in the early settlements of white people in North America as well. They did cannibalism. We know they did. They wrote about it. Now, you can argue it's based on the extreme nature of the situation they were in, but either way, does that mean we get to say white people are all cannibal savages? No. Obviously no. Anyway, also, Columbus enslaved and genocided the Taino and the Caribs.
Again, how this is completely whatever happened between those people is completely irrelevant to the morality of slavery.
Especially as they don't exist anymore.
Yes.
Why don't they exist anymore? What happened to them? Maybe we could ask Christopher Columbus.
Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes...
Time out. Why didn't you mention Europe or the Americas there?
Yeah, Romans had quite a lot of slaves and enslaved people and brought that shit all over.
Ancient Greeks?
Yep.
Yeah. The Etruscans? Who
Yeah,
were possibly the most decadent sluts of all time, I'm not sure.
Why did she leave out Europe?
Very strange, isn't it? Yeah.
Weird.
Especially because the thing she's about to say, which is, by the way, true, slave does come from Slav. Although, interestingly, it wasn't entirely white people who were enslaving those people. You also had the group that were called the Bulgars, who were essentially a kind of Turkic peoples. That's Europe.
Yes.
That they were being enslaved in Europe by Europeans.
But they're not on the map, Kevin.
Intriguing.
From the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white, by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later.
Whoa. Time out. Were they all white?
Candace, I don't think so. There were a lot of people migrating all over, especially through displacement, Roman troops settling, getting land everywhere, from all over the empire, not just from Rome. So,
yeah. Also, your friend Candace, Adolf, who you were fine with as long as he stayed within the borders of Germany, he didn't consider the Slavs to be white. Even the white ones.
Yeah, that's a very postmodern notion of white you've got going on there, Candace.
Indeed.
Ben Franklin would disagree.
Yeah, indeed. But unless they were, well, are the Slavs allowed into Saxony? I don't even know. No, presumably they are allowed in amongst
Schengen,
the
I think, yeah.
incredibly swarthy Swedes. Like the whitest people ever. Jesus. Anyway.
By the Ottoman Turks. Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean.
Why didn't you mention that? Why didn't you put that? Because you know that was at least in part in Europe as well, right? It was also in Asia and Africa, but it is like Rome is most definitely in Europe.
And their territories of like Gaul and everywhere.
Hispania, Britannia, the bits of Germania and what became the Netherlands. Yeah. The Balkans. Even the European bit of Turkey.
Go back to the Bible, Candace. Talk about the good book and all the slavery in that. Talk about the rules of, what you could do and couldn't do with your slave and how much they cost.
Candace is going to... Well, this is the thing, because it's on Prager, and it's Dennis Prager, who is, I believe, a Jewish man. I don't know if he's ever mentioned that. She's going to have to tread the fine line between wanting to appeal to Nazis and not being too overtly anti-Semitic. So I don't know if she's going to necessarily mention the Bible stuff.
We'll see.
Also, that one might make Christians look bad. So,
yeah.
Can't be doing that.
And most of Europe from the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great conquered Persia in the 4th century BC.
Hey, why don't you mention Paul? In Christ there is no male, no female, no Greek, no Roman, no slave, no free.
Also, why did she mention that it was in Persia? Because Alexander the Great was, again, European.
Yeah, didn't he start off in, Greece?
Well, yes, Macedonia specifically, the northern part of Greece. So why did she say Persia? Because, she could have mentioned all the other places he conquered. He conquered everywhere from literally from modern-day Tajikistan all the way to Egypt.
You need to, disassociate, anything European from slavery.
Yeah.
Maybe that's inconvenient.
Yeah, but let's not mention the fact that he was European. No. Okay.
It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural. The slave master model was just how the world operated in the Greek philosophers.
Where's the Bible in this? Come on. Bring your
Where's
moral
the Confederate government in this? Because they literally, fucking 4,000 years later, believe the same shit.
Yeah. Except after the United States became independent, as we talked about, they had notions of republicanism and enlightenment that made it intellectually dishonest to preach freedom while keeping people enslaved.
True. Also, Aristotle was European. For some reason, you seem to be ignoring all of this, Candace. Why? What? That's very strange. But no, it definitely existed in Africa and Asia, though. So.
Yep. Gotta keep repeating that.
Day. Slavery existed during the time of the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about the rules for slavery in the Bible. Come on, talk about it. Talk about it. Say it. Say it.
Also, we're a minute 25 in, and she said nothing of any value yet.
No.
Okay. No one has ever said that white people invented it or that America invented it.
You really could have skipped. What are we? 125 in. You could have just skipped to this part.
Yeah.
If you want to do the history of slavery, just start here.
Yeah. Just say literally as far back as we have records for.
Yeah.
Slavery has existed. Yeah, okay. That's no one's questioning that? Literally nobody is questioning that.
Because they're facts.
Yeah.
As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery.
Bravo. Brave, stunning intellectual stance you have there, Candace.
Yeah, doesn't make it right.
Took 90 fucking seconds to get to a point that no one has ever contended. Brilliant.
As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as a third of the population of the ancient world was enslaved.
Yeah, they didn't have a Bill of Rights, did they?
Yeah, that's pretty sad, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't build our fucking principles off of stuff that slave owners did.
Yeah.
Candace. Maybe. Just a thought. Just a thought. Also, they were a major item of commerce. I think I've mentioned this before on the show, but it bears repeating. They're the only thing in pre-Civil War, this of course, the only thing literally more valuable in terms of money as an asset than the slaves of America was literally the land. Literally the land underneath people's feet, the actual country.
Not that they paid for it.
No. But I mean, in terms of if you were the actual cumulative
when they turned around and sold it, yes,
financial worth, if you were to sell it all, the only thing worth more financially than the slaves was literally the land. So yeah, a very important part of commerce. But that doesn't mean you get to own people.
Yeah, or shrug it off as not a big deal.
No.
Everybody was doing the slavery.
Also, I don't know what John Steele Gordon looks like, but I don't feel the artists have done him justice.
His hands look really disproportionately big compared to his
Also, there's
ears.
a kind of slouchy potbelly thing. There's the hairline, the frowny head thing. It's just look how long his fucking hands swing lower than his dick. Look what the fuck is.
Where his elbows are relative to his.
He looks like a fucking muppet. He's proportioned like a fucking muppet.
Can you imagine if they did oh God, it's John, what's his name? He does the election nights. Fucking Curtis. John Curtis.
John Curtis, yeah. Oh
his.
God, yeah.
Yes. I've met him.
How short are my arms? No, my arms go down, probably to
look where the elbows
my hips
are.
and stuff. But yeah.
It should be about equal.
If he extends his fingers out, they go to nearly his fucking knees. That his arms are too long. There's no way this person looks like that.
Nope.
Anyway, I mean, it's not the biggest point about this obviously racist screed of a fucking shithouse video, but it's he just made a sensible, worthwhile historical point there.
And she's ruined it.
Not really relevant to anything, but it's still that's fine. And they've shit on him.
Yeah, like a lot of immorality happened when slavery was around, and it's still immoral today.
True.
And?
Here's the second thing you need to know.
So that whole bit was a thing that we needed to know.
Slavery was part of human history from very early on.
Yeah, here's the thing you need to know. It's a thing you already knew. Okay, thanks, Candace. Is the sky also blue, perhaps? I don't know.
White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Checkmate, libs.
No. Oh, God. Oh, Candace.
No.
Oh, I have stomach cramps.
Literally no. That isn't true.
But what this leaves out is that white people were the primary beneficiaries of the trade. They were at the top. They were organizing. They were fucking running it.
Kristi, we don't even need to go anywhere near that though, right? And I know that's the time frame she's thinking of, because she's literally just trying to get modern white people in America to feel good about themselves. That's the thing. First thing I told you about this video. That's just its entire meaning, its entire worth, or whatever. Purpose is the word I'm looking for. Anyway, the slavery, the putting an end legally to slavery within the territory you control predates Europeans crossing the Atlantic. The ancient Persian kings who formally put an end to slavery.
Okay, so it's not a short history of slavery. It's actually a bunch of shit.
Yeah, like she's just so wrong it's untrue.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is a way. Hey, we freed you, motherfucker. What do you want, a pat on the back? If I'm stabbing you all the time and I stop, are you going to be eternally grateful to me, or will be like, you never should have done that in the first place?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Again, it's the analogy I use regularly because I think it makes sense. If you go into a courtroom charged with murder, and you say, "Yeah, but I'm not murdering now," that doesn't mean that you don't get punished for the murders you did do. Yeah, just because you stopped doing the crime doesn't mean you didn't do the crime.
You're not exonerated.
Yeah.
Just by stopping, you're not exonerated from the harm you caused.
Yeah. But Grey on Wannabe with a great point. Did I see the movie Prince of Persia? Because the Persians were obviously white. True. And the ancient Egyptians. Did you see that the book from, I think it was Arkansas or some buttfuck place in America, and it had a bit about the ancient Egyptians, and it was a creamy white guy with the pharaoh headdress on it, and it was in ancient Egypt we were buried in pyramids or something. It was a school kids thing, And I was just like, and he was like the whitest dude. I thought, you bastards, what are you doing?
He's stealing everything cool.
What are you doing? White people did not build those fucking buildings.
No.
Or Ancient Aliens, don't even get me started. That's the most racist show. I always thought that was like a meme. And then I sat down and watched a couple of episodes, and it's ridiculously racist.
I would never waste my time on that shit, but I don't doubt you at all.
Yeah. Like, everything that brown people did was aliens.
It's too complicated.
Whereas, like, all the white people stuff, white people did that, yeah. Cool. Actually, apart from Stonehenge is the one thing that vaguely white people, although they would have been a bit darker than we are now, is the only thing they're like, aliens did that. Everything else, like the Colosseum, all of that shit, that's all, white people did. Yeah, white people did all that shit.
Yeah.
What's that? Pyramids? People stacked bricks on top of one another in a shape that they have around the world for millennia.
With an incredibly stable base.
Yeah, exactly. That's not to denigrate the building achievement.
Well,
I'm just saying, look, it's not like that surprising that humans did this thing. Look, that's how you stack rocks.
It took works. Like thousands of years for people to develop the mathematics and the skills to do just, Gothic architecture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is. I mean, it's breathtaking in its sense because it was the tallest building in the world for 4,000 years.
Yeah,
which is just mind blowing.
You gotta respect that.
Yeah, that's amazing. But there literally are some of the earlier pyramids. You can literally see where they've heaped the rocks and it kind of crumbles in on itself, and you can see them refining it over hundreds of years. Yeah, chicken tikka masala, definitely aliens. Humans didn't think of that. Not a chance.
That colour isn't natural.
Whereas the Balti, that's all Britain. That's all Britain, baby. Anyway, so no, Candace. You're wrong again. by literally thousands of years. Bravo.
In 1833, Britain...
No, Candace. We're talking like 2,000-3,000 BC. The ancient
in Persia.
Yeah.
Right, in that place that you wanted to say Alexander the Great was from?
Well, technically, she didn't say he was from there. She said he conquered there. But the subtle implication being, don't think of him as European. Don't think of him, enslaving loads of people around the world, most of whom were brown, even though he wasn't brown. Just think of it as he's cool because he was one of us or something.
Something like that.
Yeah. Also, even this is wrong because 1833 we did get rid of slavery. Haiti got rid of slavery.
Before then?
Yeah.
She didn't mention that, did she?
Before that.
Gee. So again, we're skipping over the contributions of non-white people.
Yeah, and by the way, everyone should look into the Haitian Revolution. It's amazing. Toussaint Louverture is one of the most incredible characters in all of history, and white people don't even know who he is.
Mm-mm.
Anyway.
Was the first country in the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed.
So is that what they mean? You have to pass an act? Okay, well, that means that you're precluding all of the countries in history who predate the existence of a nation state then? Because that's the only way you can have like an act with a solid parliament behind it, is the idea of having a nation there. Which means that the vast majority of human history is completely precluded from your history of slavery. So why did you mention them? Alexander the Great couldn't have passed an act to get rid of slavery, because that's not how government worked then.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Quite. But it sounds good to white people.
Who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies.
True.
Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution.
Are you going to ignore the 4 years before that, though, Candace? How did that happen?
Or the fact that those countries didn't actually have large enslaved populations in them. It was all outside, so they didn't have to worry. They weren't ever thinking, "Oh, they're going to come here."
Also, if we just skip back, 1833, 1848, and then 1864. Are we going to ignore the many decades there where both of those countries were taking advantage of the slave populations in America? They just outsourced slavery?
Yep, just completely.
Okay, cool.
After centuries of human slavery, white men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice.
Not true. Literally not. It's literally not true.
Again,
That's
just
not how that
negating the
works.
contributions of Black American activists in America.
Yep. Yep. Because, you know, John Brown, most of the people that followed him into Harper's Ferry were black. But let's just go with the white dude. Now, to be fair, solid white dude, I would argue possibly the greatest white American of all time. Spicy take, I know, but I'm going with it. But most of his people were black. Yeah.
That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War.
Yeah, but they didn't do it to end slavery.
Well, yes.
They did it to, like, show those southern bastards you can't break away from our country, you fucking rebel scum.
Yes and no. There's an interesting and nuanced discussion to be had about the fact that many of them were abolitionists. Many of them were happy to fight for the freedom of black people. Many of them weren't, of course. I think that's an interesting and nuanced discussion. But I think the bigger point is that she mentions the 300,000 Union troops who died, and that's a perfectly worthy historical fact to note. Who were they fighting?
Other white people?
Okay, but why were they fighting those white people? What were those white people fighting for?
The right to form another country so they could keep their slaves.
Oh, right. So it was literally, even by Candace's weird racial historical paradigm, they literally negate one another.
Yeah. You've got the slave preservers, and then the people who wanted to, destroy the Confederacy.
But she doesn't. She doesn't mention the 300,000 ish or so Confederate rebels who died in that war, trying to preserve slavery.
And I'm not entirely sure about the history of the Union armies. You would probably be a better placed as the more history buff to know how quickly it integrated. Was it basically from the start, or was it toward the end?
Oh, well, technically, this is the first point I would make.
Integrated, but
it wasn't integrated ever.
Yeah, they allowed it. They
allowed black troops. Yeah, it was about halfway through they started to admit large numbers of black slaves. Yeah, but the first
black people.
Sorry, black free men. But actually, I mean, technically, some of them were runaway slaves and stuff. But I did misspeak. But yeah. And I would look into a thing called Fort Pillow for an example both of enormous black bravery during that war, but also the way in which the rebel scum treated captured black people, because they literally slaughtered them en masse, and that was led by Nathan Bedford Forrest, who's the guy, the crazy robot statue guy we've talked about before, who was the first leader of the KKK, who up until this year had a statue, his bust in the Tennessee State House. That guy, he captured prisoners of war, black guys, shot them in the face right in front of people. But white people ended the slavery, so that's...
Yeah, let's not talk about the other side. Let's not talk about what happened. We're just going to talk all about how white men are actually the heroes, not the slave owners.
Sometimes it's referred to as Pillow Creek Massacre, yes. That is it's the same thing. Yeah, anyway. Because I think Pillow Creek is the literal geographic term for the place, yes.
Also, can I just point out that white men were the only ones who could, because they had excluded everybody else from political power.
Yeah.
You know, there was no diversity in the early days of the Congress. The people with political power were all, so it couldn't be any other group but white men to formally change the laws.
Yeah. Here we go. The Battle of Fort Pillow. It was fought on April the 12th, 1864. The Fort Pillow in Mississippi River, Henning, Tennessee. The battle ended with a massacre of Union soldiers, mainly African Americans, attempting to surrender by soldiers under the command of Confederate Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Fort David Eicher, a military historian, said Fort Pillow marked one of the bleakest, saddest events of American military history. Yep. There you go. So, but let's just look at the positive white people doing this thing.
Yep.
Yay.
Now, am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth, and the truth
Pause.
is that human history...
Has she praised anybody else?
No. Has she even mentioned?
Any resistance or any criticism by anyone who wasn't white?
No.
No. So
Intriguing.
I'm only going to talk about the good things about white people, but I don't want to make you think that only white people are good. I'm just only going to mention them as doing good things.
Yeah.
God. Okay.
Is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless.
Whoa.
What?
That's an interesting.
Fucking what?
That's an interesting thing, because you were literally saying white people shouldn't feel any guilt whatsoever, but now you're saying everyone has guilt. So, like, which one is it, Candace? Pick your nonsense, please. Also, the word colour has a U in it.
Okay.
Just saying.
No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. This is just fucked up on so many levels. Okay. First, no. Two, guilt. Okay, guilt is a really loaded term, right? Because guilt implies responsibility, and I think what white people need to do is take accountability for, and responsibility, if you want to say, for the institutions that they have control over today. You can't change the past, but we've inherited some fucked up systems.
Exactly.
And if you're not talking out against them, if you're not voting for people who are trying to change things, then you're not being responsible morally. And the idea that, oh my God, white people who benefit from white privilege are as guilty, as it were, she wants to say, as people who are actively discriminated against by the system. What?
Also, I mean, those are all good points, but a couple of conflicting points which spring to mind. First of which is allied to the point you made. No one alive today is guilty of that slavery from the past. Mm-hmm. So the term guilt is pretty useless. Mm-hmm. But secondly, everyone alive today, certainly in the Western world, to some degree has culpability in the fact that we still use slave labour in parts of the world now. Nike still uses sweatshop labour around the world. Most of the major fashion brands do. The iPhone company does. And we go along with it. Now, in some respects, we don't have a way out of it necessarily. Ethical consumption is not really possible under capitalism. But we are still, at least in part, culpable for the systems that allow this kind of evil to take place.
If I thought that is what she was trying to convey, I would concur entirely. However, I think she's talking really specifically about American history here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm just adding
you're right.
a layer of nuance.
No, if you take this out and you just apply it to what we are culpable today, as you pointed out in terms of consumerism, that is a true statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, as Whiteoid historian points out, America has slavery in prisons. That's still allowed by the same amendment that she was praising earlier. That still allows hundreds of thousands of largely black folk to be used as slave labour today, right now. I cannot believe they were fighting the California wildfires with prisoners earning like 4 cents a day or whatever. Ridiculous. Absolutely absurd.
If we stopped calling them prisoners and started calling them enslaved, slaves.
Conservatives all across America would become erect.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes.
So she's literally just doing straight up like, oh, brown people are savages.
So slavery, it's a wash.
Yeah.
That whole thing we talked about before about the influence of embodying and then manifesting a republic in the principles of equality before the law that requires in combination with the Enlightenment, which moved us away from the acceptance of hierarchy, which Paul and other people in the Bible taught to accept. Actually, there was a greater moral accountability, especially when we're talking about Americans talking about American history. We're not talking about another country. We're not talking about the ancient Persians. We're talking about the effects of slavery on America today. That's why we don't equate them, because they're nothing at all alike. Also,
just a point of both history and donking on this fucking stupid video, the two great examples of white emancipatory action that she mentioned earlier, Britain in 1833 and France in 1848, whilst both being true, You ignore the fact that both of those continue to be empires.
Didn't they continue to do business with the
Continue to do
slavery?
business with slave powers all over the world,
Yeah.
including the United States of America. But more specifically, as to her point about the murderous Persian Empire, the British and French empires were way more murderous for over larger swathes of Earth after they'd emancipated the slaves in their empires. So, Candace, why are you so harsh on the murderous Persian Empire, but not so much on those other empires? Or the murderous American Empire, which we're seeing crumble before our very eyes? Candace.
I think you're going to hit play now.
of North and South America, or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name
The funny, the brown and black people and all that. Be scared of those empires. But white empires are cool.
Again, people from like thousands of years ago. Why aren't we equating that? Why aren't we blaming them for American institutional racism?
Yeah, I wasn't aware that it was
wonder.
the Mongols were to blame for the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, Candace, but thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yep.
just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon.
Who has ever said that? Candace, please, for the love of God. Who has ever said that?
In America, historically, it was an exclusively white phenomenon. If you want to add that, just
Well, even that's not
limited.
technically true, actually. Even
in
that's
the
not.
colonies.
Even well, in the colonies, okay, but in the independent United States, black people
Did have
slaves. In fact, actually, in the colony of Louisiana, the largest ever slave owner was a black man.
Well, say there you go. I stand corrected. It was never a white phenomenon, and that's why nobody says that.
And slaves existed amongst the native tribes as well. Now, admittedly, they were bought from white people, but that's not really the point. The point being, it's not an exclusively white phenomenon. And no one is saying it's an exclusively white phenomenon, Candace. You're just lying.
I do feel like I want to get a pen in with white chalk, just write "said no one."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
underneath that phrase.
Well, it's literally the meme. No one, literally no one ever, and it's then the thing that she just said. Someone says. We're constantly told this thing that no one has ever fucking said.
Yep.
I mean, it's such
It's gaslighting.
bullshit. The victimizer. Well, it's gaslighting, but it's the self-victimization. The conservatives, and this is the thing. White leftists. White leftists get accused of having white guilt for pointing out things about white history that are fucked up. But I don't feel guilt for that. I don't think Kristi does. I don't think most left-wing people do. Conservatives do, though, and they expose themselves with bullshit like this. This is them trying to ameliorate the guilt they feel, because they feel so tied to these long-dead racist fuckholes that rather than just deal with that shit and move on, they feel the need to lie about the past so that they can continue in their fairy tale of America being this incredibly pure, beautiful, wondrous nation, which it isn't, and that's fine. It was started by humans and has been run by humans ever since. How could it be perfect? Accept its flaws, try and improve it, move on.
Just don't deny them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We can't move on from them if we don't admit the problem.
It's maddening. The victimization. No one is blaming you, white man. Just stop.
And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies.
Well, you're persistent in the sense that it doesn't exist. And non-existent is the most permanent thing ever.
Yeah, this is just building lies on lies at this point.
Yeah. If we make up this one lie, it might lead to the other lies.
Yeah.
True.
On social media, I come across extraordinary depictions about how Africans lived like pharaohs before Europeans came and laid waste to their paradise.
Oh no, Candace. Candace has discovered Hoteps. No. She's going to start doing We Was Kangs fucking memes. I bet you. Jesus Christ. Yeah, there's some idealisation of how Africans lived and stuff. But there's no doubt they weren't anywhere near as brutal as the white colonists who then took over those places. And there's no doubt it wasn't a paradise that was ruined by Europeans, but it was a place that was still ruined by Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wish any of this were true, but it's not.
Why? That's a really weird... Why would you wish that was true? You're a fucking lunatic. Why would you wish that were true, Candace?
This is just such unsubstantiated garbage.
But no, she literally said it was ruined by Europeans. I wish that was true. Why? But, like, I could accept that if it was an off-the-cuff thing. Like, you know, I do live streams. I'm sure I don't always word things as eloquently as would be perfect for the situation. But this is scripted.
Yeah.
And she still went, Africa was perfect and was ruined by the Europeans. I wish that were true. Why exactly? That's a really
weird. Yes.
That is incredibly sus, Candace.
It's a fantasy. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other black Africans, and in many cases.
Okay, I mean that's partly true, but mainly because it was more economically viable at first to do it that way. Because the basically you have two options: you either go and take the place over and enslave people, which they eventually did anyway, but that costs more money because armies are expensive. Or B, you take prisoners of war from them and just buy them. It's a lot more effective and efficient. So they did that. Candace? Also,
that whole history of slavery you're talking about, that's kind of how it was done for a long time, around a lot of places.
Yeah. You're obfuscating the fact that also white people purposely started wars between the tribes in order to ensure a steady flow of cheap slaves.
Here's the thing. If they didn't actually purchase people, there wouldn't be a market for it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then it would end.
Yeah.
But they kept buying them and wanting more.
Also, Candace, this is the same process that existed in all those other places as well. When the Romans took over a place, they would take the population and sell them into slavery. Sometimes to other white people, sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
Sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors.
And again, this is amazing, right? Firstly, Candace, it was actually a massive business. Don't make out like they were selling it for trinkets. There was huge amounts of gold exchanging hands. Okay? Look, the wise white man went over there and tricked the stupid black man into taking nonsense. No, there was huge amounts of gold. It was a very, very lucrative thing for both sides. Secondly, gin and mirrors, at the time we were talking about, were luxury
Really
items. Yeah.
Worth a lot of money if you could move those on and sell them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. They weren't taking it just to get drunk and look at themselves in the mirror. These were incredibly expensive luxury items that could be sold on for a lot of money.
So
And
much
would have been-
ignorance.
and would
It
have
relies
cost-
on so much ignorance.
And would have cost a lot of money to produce by the Europeans. This wasn't like they were selling it for blades of grass. No,
Yeah.
these were expensive items.
Yeah.
Like, they're not expensive now, but we're talking 400 years ago. Like, come on.
Whites didn't go into the interior and round up the natives.
At first.
Yeah, it doesn't make their buying people better.
Yeah.
They created the market.
Yeah, exactly.
They waited on the coast for their black partners to bring them black bodies.
Again, that's not strictly speaking true either. Often you had the things called feitorias in Portugal. And bear in mind, Portugal was the largest by far of all the slave powers. It took about 4.5 million, I believe it was, Africans to what is now modern-day Brazil. And they were essentially coastal forts and market towns where you could trade other goods as well, but they were largely slave markets. And it was run by Europeans, and the Europeans would venture not necessarily into the interior, but away from the coast and trade for the black people there, and then take them to the coast. So actually at the coast, it was white people trading black people to other white people.
Mm-hmm.
So just on that one basic point of history, you're wrong.
Add it to the list.
Jesus Christ. Look at this image they have. It's just so wrong on every level. Well, other than the fact that it's black people being sold from Africa. That's the only accurate part of that. And rocks exist. That is also true.
The ships are probably historically accurate.
Yeah, we're not
Water is the right
Yeah,
color.
this is pre-triangular sails, so I'll let them have that, yeah.
The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors.
And to the people they were sold to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leave
Like,
that part out.
No one is saying the people who sold the slaves in Africa were cool, and
Right.
only the white people involved were bad. Again, this is nonsense.
And again, the double standards of the American principles of the revolution that we're building, you know? That's why the moral culpability is higher.
Yep.
Because you're hypocrites then.
Yep.
Here's the third thing you need to know. If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, is she about to criticize capitalism?
No. No.
Comrade
no.
Candace.
Don't be so loud. No. She's using this as a way to try and obfuscate the fact that, well, slavery wasn't that bad because it's still happening.
There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today.
There are about 2.5 million prisoners in America right now.
Yeah, Candace. Why do you keep focusing just on Africa? It's almost like you're trying to demonize black people.
Yeah. Also, who is buying the product of those 700,000 slaves in Africa, Candace?
These are literally white supremacist talking points.
Yeah. But what countries are buying the stuff that's being created by slaves? Is it companies from the West?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it literally is, yeah. I think I'm right in saying, look, Canada, surprisingly to me, has really crept up in the States colonialism-wise. I think it owns something like 60% of the mines in sub-Saharan Africa are owned by Canadian companies.
Wow.
Yeah, and they use lots of whom, not all, of course, for legal reasons, but many of whom use slave or at least slave adjacent. Because if you're getting paid tuppence a day, you're a slave. That's not a fair acquisition of labour or anything. So Canada alone is doing lots and lots of that slavery. But because it's outsourced, it's fine. It's happening over there to black people. Who cares? Mm-hmm. Sweatshops. Oh, that's over in fucking Indonesia. Who cares? You know.
I want my T-shirt from TJ Maxx for $1.99.
I want my Yeezys. Yeah, that's right. I'm calling you out.
Right,
I don't know
now,
what a Yeezy is.
That's the lowest.
It's a type of shoe made by is it Nike, the company, but it's in combination with Kanye West.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe. Oh, Adidas. My bad. I don't really care. They're all fucking garbage. They will all be expropriated come the revolution, friends. When the capybaras have taken control. You missed that, didn't you? Yeah, they took over. Well, not didn't take over. They've sort of invaded a gated community in Argentina. They've been invaded by capybaras. And the only bad thing is they're also biting dogs. But I'm guessing the dog started it.
Oh, I'm trying to figure out how to do like a Che Guevara.
Oh no, we've already done one. Someone already did a drawing. It's in the Discord of well, I refer to him as Fidel Capstro.
Okay. I like Che Guevara.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Estimate that I could find. Other sources say there are many more. For context, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States.
What was the population then? How many states were there?
But also, this is incredibly slippery use of language. Because notice she says, were brought to the United States of America. Yeah. Not that existed in the United States. Because I think the height of slavery was about 4.5 million slaves existed in the United States. But that's because, literally quite early on in the American Republic's Constitution, they outlawed not in the Constitution, sorry, in the... in law or whatever, they banned the importation of slaves. So basically you had to breed them on site. Yeah. So they were American. But that doesn't mean, Candace, that only 350,000 slaves existed in America at any point, because it was virtually always much larger than that.
Good catch.
So again, slippery use of language, incredibly dishonest, Candace. Millions of slaves existed in America.
Very white supremacist talking point-esque.
Indeed. I think it was about 30% or something of the Confederate States population were slaves.
Child soldiers, human trafficking, forced labor. These are the conditions that currently exist.
Really focusing on brown people here.
Yeah, because that happens to white people too, Candace.
It's really about demonizing Africa. It's really pitting white people in America against Africa. This is fucked.
Because the other day when I saw the story in the newspaper of, I think it was Ukrainian women who were being sex trafficked into the UK, that was being done from a majority white country by white people into another majority white country.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, all of these people are black in the image.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Yep.
It's very strange.
Sub-Saharan region where the transatlantic slave trade originated. African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then, and no.
Also, just on a historical point, that is technically what the sub-Saharan Africa region is generally portrayed as. But actually, the vast majority of slave trade happened on the west coast. So literally just the curvy bit there. Mm. That's where virtually all the slaves came from. So everything else up here, from like Mali and Niger, all the way down and across into South Africa and obviously Madagascar, the slaves weren't taken from there. By and large, across the...
There might have been a few, but if there was one, the whole country got filled in.
Yeah, so that's... Yeah, that just...
Also, it's very important that you do the colonial lines and not the areas.
Yeah, exactly. Because those countries definitely all existed exactly like that at the time. Including South Sudan, who existed since 2005.
Yep.
So, but other than that, yeah, true.
African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then, and no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men.
Oh God.
Of white men.
Oh God.
No, they're just being enslaved in prisons by white men.
Couldn't even say majority white population.
No, just the white man. In case you were wondering exactly who the target of this particular piece of propaganda was.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, just.
Yeah.
Whites.
In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries.
What?
Again, 13th Amendment allows for slavery is in prisons, so that's not true.
Also, aren't they constantly going on about people being trafficked across the border from Mexico to the United States? Because isn't that a form of slavery that they usually complain about when they want to pretend to give a fuck about the rights of immigrants and why they need to stop immigration because it's bad for the migrants? When it's that day to use that excuse, they care about that then, but now they're just going to ignore the fact that that's happening, and America is a majority white country. Because again, there are no non-white countries and there are no white countries because look. A white person in every country and there's a black person in every country. The countries don't exist in that way. So we'll just say majority non-white countries. America is a majority white country.
It's all about exculping.
For now, white man.
It's about making sure that exculpable, is that the word? What word am I looking for that sounds like this? That they're being excluded from this, like not having Europe be colored in as part of where slavery happened, focusing on white men
exculpatory.
Exculpatory.
Yeah, well, if that's how you want to pronounce it, yes.
Yeah, exculpatory, yes. It's normally used with evidence in a court case. That's my association. But here, all of this is meant to basically say, you're fine, white guys. Don't feel bad about institutional racism left over from slavery, because it wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
But we hear almost nothing about that.
Really?
Well, because Americans don't hear shit about any other part of the world unless they're involved in it.
Well, America, yeah. But,
yeah, and that's what we're talking about here. Look at Fox News.
Yeah, true.
True.
Just
like I'd be super down with America learning anything outside its borders, but I'd also be super down with America learning anything about its own country as well.
Yeah.
That would be a good start. Yeah.
Not if Texas Republicans have their way. Anyway.
Texas. Let's not get into American history. They don't like it there.
Like we hear nothing about how slavery was universal until good people in Europe and America ended it 2 centuries ago.
Because it's not true, Candace. That's why we don't hear about that. Because that isn't real. You made that up.
You're lying.
Why? Because our so-called leaders, black and white, wouldn't profit from it.
What?
Also, why is James O'Keefe winning an Oscar there? That's very strange. Also, is that Ibrahim Kendi X there, but in the background? Is that
it
who
has
that
to
is?
be.
That
It
looks
has to
like him,
be.
doesn't it? Yeah.
He's their new Nancy Pelosi.
He is, yeah. Welcome to 2021, Anita Sarkeesian / Ibrahim X Kendi, or whatever. Is it Kendi X or X Kendi? I don't know. Apologies.
It's Ibrahim X Kendi.
Apologies, Ibrahim.
Yeah.
And also, is that... No, it's not. No, never mind.
Don't know.
Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable.
Motherfucker, you've done a whole video of white victimhood. What the fuck are you talking about?
Get some help.
What are you talking about?
Where is all this money in black victimhood exactly?
The Oscars. It's there. Look, Kristi, the Oscars.
To a white man.
Yeah.
The Oscar's so white. I mean, even a PragerU video, they can't give a black person an Oscar.
Well, they want it to be realistic. So
yeah, that's at least
accurate. The only historically accurate part of this video is the white guy winning the Oscar.
I am trying to think hard of a single person who is known, their career is known for black victimhood. I can't.
That's the lawyer? The white woman is the Gloria something.
Oh right, yes.
Come on, chat. We know this. Come on, chat. Don't let me down.
She does a lot of like feminist cases.
Gloria Allred.
Yes.
Yes. There we go. Lovely work. Anyway, yeah. So they're all there.
It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups.
Yeah, except
like yours. This one.
I was about to say, yeah, like I don't know that literally sitting on millions of dollars as your supposedly non-profit organisation does, Prager, that you get to be like, other people are making lots of money for making stupid fucking comments about race.
Yes.
What fucking planet are you on?
You're complaining you can't monetize your white supremacist propaganda on YouTube.
Oh no, that's the weirdest whinging these people fucking do.
Mm-hmm.
And if black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, if we embraced the patriotic spirit that holds all men are created equal.
Well, okay, yeah, but I mean, if they were treated as equal,
exactly,
they might embrace that shit.
Candace, you can't be treated. You can't act like a partner if people don't treat you like a partner.
Look, black Americans, just pretend that we do the all men are created equal bit, and shut up.
The thing is,
that's literally it. That's what they're saying.
You know what, Candace? Black Americans are incredibly patriotic. They want us to live up to the promise of all men are created equal, or all people are created equal, and we're not right now. And that's a problem. That's the problem. We're not living up to those ideals.
Well, we are. I think you are now, because Fortnite did an MLK special.
I have that in my bookmark.
Which is, I mean, it's not at all disrespectful, at all. And it's certainly not disrespectful that they put the PS2 logo over the forehead of Martin Luther King. That's not disrespectful at all. It means you're post-racial America.
No, someone pointed out that Fortnite now has more information on MLK than Texas school books.
True. And you can be fucking Rick from Rick and Morty dancing about in the Lincoln Memorial pool whilst listening to the MLK thing, and you will still learn more from history than a Texas school book. True.
The patriotic spirit that is our real heritage.
No,
literally citation needed.
Bitch, our heritage is, what was it? Genocide, blood, and exploitation. The global network of capital essentially functions. But I know that our heritage is white guys taking monarchical power, transforming it into Republican power so they can share it amongst themselves in order to keep everybody else the fuck repressed.
True.
That's the history. Like, the rights they gave themselves were nice.
All men are created equal. Shut up. It said it on the paper, therefore it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus.
And the race hustlers would soon be out of business.
Bitch, look into the fucking mirror.
You're wearing all white like the Klan.
race hustlers. You shut the fuck up.
Honestly, where's that mirror you were talking about earlier? Kevin's right. You need to look in it.
Exactly.
You're basically, pandering to racist old white guys right now. That is your demo.
I don't know how she fucking sleeps at night.
I
don't know. I don't know how a white person saying this would sleep well at night, let alone a black person. You are selling short every single motherfucker in American history who was enslaved. Every one of them. You are taking a shit on all of them.
Yeah. Harriet Tubman might have a few things to say to her.
I hope Harriet Tubman would stab this bitch. I genuinely hope she would.
I was thinking more like a good old smack, but
Nah, she was a cutter. No, she used to fucking slash bitches.
Shiver.
Yeah. No, she didn't fuck around.
No, she led a mission to burn down plantations of slave owners and save 70 people from slavery that night. She ain't gonna put up with this shit.
Exactly. They didn't call her Machete for nothing. Okay? That's all I'm saying.
Anyway. Someone do the rap battle of Candace Owens versus...
Yeah. Well, we'll get that. We'll get what you call it onto that. Frederick Douglass, because he's got a bright future ahead of him.
Quite. A lot of people are talking about him.
True. Yeah. A lot of hype going on there.
Really going to be hitting it big.
Who wants that? I'm Candace Owens, author of Blackout for Prager University.
Fuck you!
God. She's an obnoxious person.
Yeah, no, she's evil. That was genuinely fucky.